Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
And David, this week we're going to be reviewing the
ATC SCM40 loudspeaker.
Now, I've been listening to these over the last couple of weeks, and I've got to be really honest here, I wasn't all that familiar with ATC products before these turned up. I'm kind of on the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever really heard a pair of ATC loudspeakers, which is criminal because the company have been going for, oh my gosh,
yonks.
Absolutely.
So well back into the 70s, I think.
Yeah. And you know, they're almost a little bit of hi-fi's best kept secret. In a way.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because I've thoroughly enjoyed my last 2 weeks with these ATCs.
Yeah.
I'd say they are really quite stonking loudspeakers.
I think they are too, and you know, using my normal kind of reviewer gauge, normally if I review a speaker, then you know I get someone to collect it fairly quickly because I've understandably got lots of stuff going through the house, you know, and but strangely enough, like the neat magistras actually,
yes.
It took me a long time to give them back. You know, I normally sort of phone people up and say hi, you know, cheers, thanks, I'm ready for uplifting it. But I think I had my review pair of SCM40s for 4 or 5 months, I think, you know, and considering I've got NS1000s sat right behind them, you know, that's quite a thing, and especially when you remember that these things cost 4,000 quid, they're not £20,000 high-end, ultra high-end speakers.
I think that's amazing. I really do. And you know, again, we talk about this quite a lot on this little channel, but we say, you know, about the relativity of cheap and expensive in the hi-fi world. But for what you get here, I think £4 is a veritable bargain.
Yeah,
I really do. You get a proper pair of loudspeakers, which are really well made, really well put together, sound great, very, very credibly hi-fi, in the true sense of the word, and I found them quite entertaining. They put a smile on my face. They kind of, you know, they sort of, they have their own style. But you know, you turn them on, and I think I know them well enough to know instantly what their sound is like. So I could sort of close my eyes and know, you know, I'm listening to a pair of ATCs. They've got a certain sound, a certain signature.
So would you be able to tell in a blindfold listening test between the SCM40 and a pair of BBC LS35As, Mike?
Just a little bit, just a little bit. Which is ironic, because I think the reason why I don't know the ATCs is because they're skewed more at the studio market as monitor speakers. As were the LS35As, but you couldn't get any more chalk and cheese, really, could you?
No.
And I love these. So I'm not saying they're perfect.
No.
And I think they do have, you know, a few sort of quirks. But I've quite enjoyed the quirks as well.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, you know, that no speaker is perfect. We all know that.
Yes.
You know, there are a lot of speakers on the market which are sort of, you know, engineered to be more neutral and more sort of balanced and all the rest of it, forensic and so on, which are far less fun to listen to, I think, than these. But at the same time, they are certainly big fun to listen to, but they're not wildly crazy. So, you know, we're not talking a pair of sort of Klipschler-Skalas, you know, with the sort of massive horns and sort of bonkers, you know, sort of sound quality that you know, you either love or you hate.
Or even my Saras, with that sort of disco speaker kind of approach. High highs and low lows. You know,
yeah, so that they're kind of in strange territory between a character speaker that people know isn't perfect, and a sort of, you know, neutral kind of mainstream kind of plain vanilla speaker. And I think they tread the balance very well.
They do. It's quite an interesting design, isn't it? Because they've got you know, it's almost like the mid-range unit and the treble unit sort of work very much in tandem. And then so the bass unit is sort of there as well. But the mid and the treble are really quite glorious. And I think it's something to do with the dome mid-range unit, isn't it? I think that's the secret, isn't it?
Well, as every great loudspeaker has a dome tweeter and a dome mid-range like the NS1000 mic. And the idea is to get, you know, the dome mid-range gives very good dispersion, obviously, but you've also got that kind of phase coherence. So the tweeter is a kind of smaller version of the mid-range, so they kind of have similar, you know, properties,
yes.
Kind of acoustic properties. It's funny because in the 70s there were quite a few speakers around with dome mid-range drivers, but they sort of went out of fashion.
Yes.
And these days, you know, most three-ways or more bigger than three-ways use effectively a kind of, you know, shrunken version of a woofer, so like a cone of some sort. So the mid-range kind of follows the design of the woofer, whereas with these, they you know, it's the other way around. The two drive units in the most sensitive region, the presence region, are basically working together and have very similar profiles.
I don't think ATC care about what's in fashion, do they? They just make
No.
speakers which they don't do upgrades all that often, do they? Really?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great point actually, because you know, I mean, we were saying earlier, you know, sort of monitor audio. No offense to monitor audio, I like a lot of their stuff, but you know, it feels like it's virtually every year there's a new, you know, gold or silver or something, you know, series. ATC introduced the SCM40s in 2013, and the last time they introduced the one before that was
1988. You've got to love it, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've got to love it. And just going back to that domed mid,
Yeah.
And you said it yourself, kind of the way they work. It gives a terrific image. It really does. I mean, you know, you close your eyes and you sort of, you know, you can sort of pinpoint the instruments as you're listening to them in a really amazing sort of soundstage.
Yeah.
Really impressed with that. I haven't heard a set of speakers which image this well since probably something like the Celestion 6000s.
Yeah.
In the sort of early 90s.
Although you do have Lynn Icebergs, Mike.
Well, yes, yes, and they don't know what imaging means.
No.
They have no idea what that means. In fact, you've got to laugh, because I did the same as you. You said about putting these in front of your NS1000s. I put these in front of my isobarics, and it was, you know, the difference was amazing. Now, in terms of sort of sheer quality, you know, they weren't as good as the barracks for me, but you know, the barracks were pretty much the same price of these in, you know, 1986. So you know, you kind of get it.
Exactly.
It's comparing apples and oranges, isn't it? But with these, I really love the imagery.
Yeah.
Not quite as deep as the extension as bass as the Lins, but but you know, great fun. And you've said this. They're a brilliant rock music speaker.
They are.
They really are a brilliant rock music speaker. And you know, you thump it out. You really, you know, you want to have a little dance to them, don't you? Because they're great.
Yeah.
They really are for rock.
No, absolutely that. I mean, you know, and you can kind of, you know, ATC's kind of background is in pro audio, isn't it? And massive speakers and sort of concerts and stadiums and all that kind of thing.
Yes.
And so ATC speakers have a certain kind of character. And to me, the SCM40s are sort of, you know, it's kind of boiled it down into a relatively small package. You don't need a speaker the size of a barn door.
No.
And these, the SCM40s are about just under a meter tall, I think. So you know, they're large-ish floor standers, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. They're heavy as well.
Yeah, they are. 31 kilograms each.
Yes.
So they're large-ish. They're heavy, and but they are, you know, they're sort of usable in a normal room in the way that bigger ATCs are not. You know.
Yes.
So.
And they're quite an interesting design, because it's almost like they're chamfered as they go around to the back. So you've got a much narrower flat back edge than you have front, and it does look very, very nice.
Yeah.
Also, the inputs are tri-wireable.
Yeah.
So you can split your inputs.
Yeah.
That used to be, I think, a lot more fashionable than it probably is now.
Yeah.
But I've done it with mine just because I happen to have a pair of tri-wire cables. And you know, if they're saying use it, use it. So I did that.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen that in a little while.
Yeah.
But they're really, really lovely. And I think for price-wise, they're a great price point.
Yeah.
You feel like you're really getting something for your money.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I think sound quality-wise, they're very inoffensive. And I mean that as a compliment, because I think a lot of speakers, they sort of, you know, they'll work really well with certain types of music and not with others.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just too bright for my taste, or
Yeah.
you know, not enough bass. Maybe these are kind of really absolute kind of bang in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And present things really well. Although you did make a really interesting point, which was you said that it does make it sound a little bit like every single record's been made in the same studio, and I kind of get it, because
Yeah.
they have a very distinct tonal characteristic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, to me, that's the thing that marks them down. I think almost every other aspect of their sound quality marks them up a lot, actually. But you know, you can take a kind of Isaac Hayes early 70s LP recorded with you know, in this sort of Stax studio, which had a very rich sound, you know, very sort of warm sound. And then you can put Blondie on, you know, recorded. I don't know where it was, probably, you know, some sort of grotty sort of studio of with a much drier sound quality.
Yes.
And still,
Yes.
the ATC seemed to sound a bit samey tonally.
Sure.
But
it's funny you say it, because actually I was playing some Blondie through them earlier.
Yeah.
We were playing Union City Blue and The Hardest Part, and some, you know, things like that,
Yeah.
from one of their early albums. And it obviously it's not the greatest recording in the world, but the ATCs almost seem to make the most of it.
Yeah.
They're like, you know, come on, bring it on then.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have a crack at this.
Yeah, so they're so good in the time domain, I think.
They really are, yeah.
So, and I think one of the reasons for that is that they've got a infinite baffle cabinet, so they're not ported. And you and I, you know, we both ended up with speakers so we've always had speakers that tend not to be reflex ported.
Yes.
I'm not saying that every reflex ported speaker is bad, and there's plenty of good ones, but still there's a tendency there. You know, I think that infinite baffle sealed box speakers tend to have tighter, tauter and faster bass. And you know, when I was interviewing Billy Woodman about this probably 9 years ago, I think it was, when I did my original review of these, you know, he was saying that for this particular size of cabinet, you know, infinite baffle sealed box gives much better, more linear bass characteristics and better time domain. And I think he's absolutely right. I mean, he'd know more than I would, but that's just been my observation over the years, that, you know, we've listened to sealed box speakers a lot, and they do seem to be not only more room friendly and less sensitive to positioning, but they seem to have a much more kind of LED like bass. It kind of goes on, it goes off, it goes on, instead of having a kind of slurred kind of sound that you sometimes get from a port.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and actually, as a result, you can actually hear, you know, bass drums, bass guitars being played.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes with a ported speaker, it's just a sort of mush of sound.
Yeah.
Now, but the downside of that, I think, is they don't quite go as deep.
Yeah.
As a result.
Yeah.
But the bass we get from these, I really like.
Yeah.
But they don't sort of they don't mush it up. They actually accurately reproduce it, which is great.
Well, that's right. That's why many people use reflex ports, is that you can get lower for the same cabinet volume. You get lower.
Yes.
You can also get higher efficiency as well.
Yeah.
And in that respect, the SCM40s are not great. So I think the quoted sensitivity from ATC is 85 dB, which puts it down there, you know, with sort of many 1970s speakers and sort of Saras and things like that. It's not great. You need a muscle amp to really drive them.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah.
You really do. So for me, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a bit of a Rush fan, and I was playing. They're great.
Are you
speakers.
really, Mike?
They're great speakers for Rush. They really are. They're kind of made for it, because you know, because Rush are really into Geddy Lee being a great bass guitarist, Neil Peart on the drums, and you know, they reproduce that really, really well, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing.
I agree. You can
that
really
kind of rock sound.
Yeah, so they really tell you who's a great drummer and who
Yes.
isn't.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you know, Neil Peart is, you know, We Are Not Worthy, one of the very best ever, and you know about it with these speakers, whereas some speakers just sort of soften, you know, his timing brilliance.
Yeah, quite.
A bit, don't they?
I was listening to YYZ from Moving Pictures, and again, you know, Geddy's bass playing on that is really quite sublime through the ATCs.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
sounds absolutely terrific. Because actually, the bass playing on that isn't sort of super low. It's because that kind of hits the sweet spot of the ATCs absolutely perfectly.
Yeah.
So, you know, great rock speakers. That's not to say they don't just play rock.
No,
They're
I mean,
particularly
they're
good
great
at
for
that.
techno and electronic, actually. You know,
Yes,
I was playing
yeah.
a lot of techno when I had them, and you know, that kind of electronic sub bass is absolutely fantastic
Yeah, sure, sure.
through the ATCs.
No, very cool.
You know, so and also because they're a true three-way, you know, you really get that kind of big wideband sound with a lack of kind of nasal coloration and muddle in the mid-range. So they've got a clear and open mid-range and a kind of gutsiness that you get from a three-way
Yes.
that you don't get from a two-way.
Yeah.
So there are so many positive aspects to them which predispose them particularly well to rock and to electronic and techno. I think for classical, you know, when the kind of tonality and timbre of instruments is a bit more important, you know, they're not quite so stellar,
Yeah,
but
sure.
they still make classical music very jaunty and rhythmic and fun.
Sure, yes,
so
yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
not bad in any way.
No.
But they are the, you know, king of rock, aren't
The
they?
king of rock and roll.
Exactly.
Exactly,
Yeah.
in the words of Paddy McAloon.
Absolutely.
But you know, thank you for introducing me to ATC. They've been a great find for me. I'm disappointed that I haven't listened to them before and really
Yeah.
had a chance to
Yeah.
before. They hide their light under a bushel. So
Well,
to
I
speak,
think
so.
that's a really good point as well, because it's almost, I don't know if this is true. It's probably not, but it seems that you know, that the sort of domestic hi-fi side is just sort of an interesting diversion for them. You know, they're really doing kind of pro stuff.
Yes.
And it's, oh, by the way, we just happen to do a few you know,
Really
hi-fi
nice,
things. Yeah,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
you know are very underrated, and even more so considering the keen price and the beautiful build quality. The build quality is fantastic for a £4,000 speaker,
It really is.
and it's made in the UK. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, completely in
you
the
know,
UK.
it's
Yes.
not shipping cabinets in from Shenzhen or anything.
No, no.
All of the drive units are bespoke ATC designed and made as well. So it's real thoroughbred stuff.
I really like
Yeah.
it. I mean, I hope we can get to have a listen to some more of their speakers in the future and,
Yeah.
and trial them out. 'Cause
If
this
we
has been
can-
a pleasure.
If we can fit them in the room.
If I can, they came in the biggest flight cases I've ever seen. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway, in terms of our hi-fi riffometer, what are you going to give our lovely ATC loudspeakers?
I'm going to give them 9.5.
Okay.
I really love these. There's a particular personal favourite of mine. Yes, I know tonally they are a little bit samey, you know, and kind of 1970s disco sounds sort of, you know, tonally quite similar to sort of 1990s Britpop sort of thing. They're not quite as good as telling you the sort of tonal quality of the music. But so that's where the 0.5 has gone.
Okay.
But they're just great for the money. They're so much fun, and you just want to listen to them, don't you?
You really
They're
do.
great.
I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
listening to them.
Yeah.
What I will say is I changed rooms with mine as well. I listed them into my main listening room, then I put them into a different room,
Yeah.
and they didn't seem to mind where they were placed.
No.
They were really cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to give them a 9,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you where they've dropped their point because they've only just been on my radar. I'm disappointed that I hadn't heard of ATCs before.
So you're marking them
I'm
down
marking them
because
down
you
for
couldn't
being rubbish in their marketing
you couldn't
department.
be bothered to find out. Well, I think that's not fair. I mean, you know, they have been around, but
Sure.
you know, some people need to pay more attention to speakers that aren't made by Lynn in the 1970s.
There
like.
we are. Absolutely. So basically, I'm marking myself down.
Yeah, well,
Excellent.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But no, very good. So look, we've thoroughly enjoyed reviewing the ATCs. Thanks very much to all of you for watching this episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. We will be back with another one soon, but in the meantime, we'll see you again. Thanks very much.
Bye bye.